All right, well, I'd like to welcome everybody and thank you for joining us. My name is David McCaleb. This is my daughter, Abigail. Abigail goes to Northstar. And we just wanted to share something with you guys that we've done in our home for a while. And Abigail suggested that we try to share it with some others and those who might be like-minded as far as creative writing, story, what I call story building. It's where we kind of collectively make up a story, and we have a lot of fun with it, and we kind of do it as we go along. And what I've kind of chosen to do to get us started is very simply, like, I've got the beginning of a story, the first chapter, and I'll go ahead and I'll tell you guys about it, and kind of just the oral tradition. I'll just talk through the story, and then I would love to hear your input. Love to hear your thoughts, your ideas for characters or plot twists, or just what the next chapter should be. And it's as simple as that. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and get started. And this story does not have a title. Like, you guys just go ahead and when I do this, I kind of close my eyes because I can visualize things better when I'm not distracted by what I'm seeing. And so go ahead and close your eyes. And right now, what's going on is Matthew. Matthew's walking out of his off of a deck, and he's walking down a few steps, and the steps are wooden, and they're weather beaten. They're salt treated wood, what we would call marine grade wood, and it's really rough under his feet. He doesn't have any shoes on. He left them inside, and he's walking along a boardwalk, kind of a dock thing that leads up to a dune, and beyond the dune is the Atlantic Ocean. This is taking place in Maine, and it's a little bit chilly. He's
USA for you.
Yeah, United States, up northeast, farthest northeast state that we have. And so he's on the coast, and he's walking toward this dune. He's behind the dune, and the walkway, so that you don't hurt the dune, the walkway kind of goes up and over it to the beach, and there are not too many people left on the beach. Actually, there's no one right now because it's evening time. It's not dark yet, but it is starting to get darker, and it's at the end of the summer season. And Matthew's always wondering, why in the world, why do we always come up here every year? We live in a beach town. We live in Chincoteague, Virginia. Why is it that once a year we have to take a vacation to yet another beach town up here near Scarborough, Maine? And so he's the door closes behind him. He walks down these steps. He's walking toward the dune. He feels the sand between his toes, and he's had his shoes off for a couple days now. And it kind of feels a little bit raw between his toes. He's not used to walking without shoes, and that's all he seemed to be doing the last couple of days is just spending a lot of time on the beach. And the sand up here in Maine is much more coarse than what he's used to. And he gets up and over the dune. At top of the dune, when he kind of looks down, each at the top edge, he kind of looks. It's kind of at the peak of the dune. He looks, and there's some what we call dune fence. It catches. It's like that wooden dune fence that catches the wind when it blows, and it slows the wind down so that the sand drops out of it and helps build the dune up. And there's several layers of this. And the last layer, about third layer, it's all rotted and broken down. So it's some brand new dune fence, and then some halfway rotted dune fence, and then some dune fence which is just completely gone. And he's walking down the dock, into the water, not into the water, but over the water. And the docks up here are floating docks mainly because the tide swing. The tide swing up here is 10 feet, 9 feet even, and that's much more than what he's used to down in Chincoteague, Virginia. But because of that, the docks are floating. They have to be able to rise and drop with the tide. And there's no one on the beach actually. Now that he's kind of out over the water a little bit, there's no one on the beach. The wind is starting to pick up a little bit, and he hears some laughter, and he turns around back toward the house. And actually, there's several houses there, and there's no one there. A little further down the beach, he does notice a little flash of red. It looks like a woman is kind of leading her kids up over the dune down there, going home. And other than that, there's no movement on the beach. So maybe it was a seagull that he heard. And he gets down to the end. It's only about a 40 foot dock over the water. The water's awful deep. It drops off very steeply here. And he gets to the end, and the end of the dock is just a T, and it's got a T shape, and it's got 2 chairs on either side of the T. The chairs, he noticed, are bolted down. They're these old rusted angle irons that have with some stainless steel screws bolting these chairs down so they don't blow off and lost in the weather, because there can be some pretty severe gales up here. He's been told, though he's never actually seen one in his time that he's been up here. But this time, he's getting a chill. He inhales really deeply through his nose, and he smells salt. He smells the familiar salt sea, but not the marsh that he just doesn't like, that marsh mud smell that he gets so much around Chincoteague. It's just a more crisp, it's a more clear salt smell. He hears again the call of the seagull, and that must have been what he heard earlier. It wasn't the laugh of anybody. It was just a seagull. And he looks to the south, and it's just clear and blue. He looks to the north, and it's dark. It's like almost like a hazy black wall, and it looks like it's moving and kind of churning. It's kind of hard to see because it's fairly far away still, but it just looks like one of those, maybe a storm. And then he sees a flash of lightning from the sky down to the water, and he counts the seconds, and it's a good 20 seconds before he hears the crack of the thunder, and so he knows that's at least 5 miles away. And so he still feels safe out on the water, but then he gets, he's getting some salt spray from the wind, but then something smacks his cheek, and it's cold, and he thinks that must have been a raindrop, and it very well could be something moving in. And he notices, he's still looking north, and he sees a little white dot on the horizon between the blackness of the sky and the steel blue of the water below him. He kind of sees this dot, and he's wondering what it is, and maybe it's a boat that's still out there, and he feels as the waves are kind of picking up a little bit, he feels the dot kind of rise and fall, kind of like a boat. Not as gracefully, but he's looking at this dot, and he's looking at it for a good 4 or 5 minutes, and sure enough, it's getting closer. And now he sees that the dot is actually a white sail, and maybe 2 sails, but it's still too far away to see. And it seems to be going in front of this storm that's coming down. And Michael kind of looks around, and he doesn't want to stay out on the dock too long, but it's a short dock. He can get back if the weather gets bad quickly. He knows how to swim if he was to get blown overboard or something. He knows what he's doing. So he he stays. He stands back up, and now he's looking at that sail, and it's gotten a lot closer now, and he's looking, and it looks like it's a trawler because there are things sticking out the side of the boat. And I know, he knows on the Chesapeake Bay and up and around Maryland that sometimes they do trawl with sailboats because there are rules and laws that say, certain times you can't use power, so they use sailboats, and he doesn't understand it. Why they do it that way, but he knows that it's not uncommon. But then the arms seem to be swinging up and down, and that's normally not what you see. And so the boat's getting a little bit closer now, and he sees that it's not a trawler at all. He sees that it's actually a wooden vessel, not long, maybe 40 feet. It kind of comes up in a point in the front. It's just a single square sail, and those arms sticking out the side were not trawler arms. I don't know what you call those things. One of you guys can look it up and post it first class for me, but they're not trawler arms at all, but they're oars. And it makes him think, his father's a waterman. His father makes his living raising and cultivating oysters, and he hated it, but last summer he had to spend hours and hours all day at a seafood festival shucking oysters. And at this seafood festival, when his father let him off just for a little while, he went and he was able to see what they called the tall ships, these huge ships that had come into harbor. And he was able to go on one and look around. It's these old English ships, but this didn't look like one of those. It was smaller, and like I say, it only had the one sail. He thought it might have had two, but it didn't. It only had the one, and it's coming for the dock. And he's looking around like, what's it going to do? Is it going to beach? The wind is picking up, and the dock is actually rocking up and down pretty heavily now. It's got some pretty good swells going, and the boat is getting closer. And as it's coming straight for the dock, and he kind of backs off, like he goes back and toward the house just a little bit, but he's still on the dock. And as the boat gets closer, the oars lift and they slide in. And the boat stays at the end of the dock. And he smells something that is, and what is it? It's like it's the sea for certain, but he smells oil. And he smells, and there's something else, and that is kind of an acrid smell. And you can't place his finger on it. He's never smelt it before, but this boat is not lashed to the dock, and yet it's staying there just a foot or two off of the dock. Its sail is full. The wind is driving it, and actually the wind is beating against his cheek now. And he thinks, he must be dreaming. He sat down in that chair, and he must have fallen asleep. Well, maybe the wind's going to wake him up, or the waves, because that storm must be coming. Maybe that's what he's feeling on his cheeks, is this water. Well, why isn't he waking up? And he hears a laughter come from the boat, and he can't see over the edge. I don't know what you call the gunwales, or he goes up to the edge, and he's looking through the slots where the oars were. And there's no one. It's just an empty, very shallow deck with benches next to the oars, and the oars are pulled in. And he looks to one end, he looks to the other, and he smells that acrid scent. It fills his nostrils. He doesn't know what it is, but it's an oily, acrid smell, and he doesn't understand why is this boat just staying here with the sails that when they're full. And the laughter now he hears, and he recognizes it came from behind the sail on the boat. And he knew exactly what it was. He couldn't put his finger on it earlier, but it was the voice of his sister. And he's saddened when he thinks of it. You know, he's definitely dreaming now because his sister's been dead for a year. Um, Actually, they never found her body. She drowned. She was in the water and just at the beach and down at Assateague, and it's not a hard riptide or anything, but one minute she was there and the next minute she wasn't. She was a fairly good swimmer, and they never found her body. They searched. They had the Coast Guard, everybody had searched for her for 3 days, and then they finally called it off. And they just figure they don't know what happened. So he knows that he's got to be dreaming. And then she says to him very clearly, "Come on, chicken." And he stands up. He hasn't heard her call him that for a long time. See, his sister was Tabitha. The family called her Tabby. He called her Gabby because all she would do would talk and talk and talk, and she would get on one thing and just talk forever about it, talk your ear off until you were so bored to death of hearing about it. But then it'd just be something different the next week. First, you know, 1 week it would be about something with horses, and then the next week it would be about a dog, and then the next week it would be about her garden and what she's going to do with her garden and what she's going to plant. She plants this beautiful garden in summer and then never weeds it. And so Michael and Tabby, or Michael and Gabby as he called her, they were always poking fun at each other, and he was reserved. Maybe that's why he didn't drown and she did. She wasn't scared of anything. And she would call him chicken, and she said, "Come on, chicken." And he heard it very clearly from behind the sail, and he lifts himself up on the gunwale, straining to see if he can see something behind the sail. And then before you know it, he loses his balance and he topples forward into the boat, head over heels, right onto his rear end. And he looks back he's facing, when he gets up, he's still seated, but when he raises his head, he's looking right back at the dock. Well, where the dock was. The dock's no longer there. Matter of fact, the houses aren't there anymore. And he looks and he smells a very heavy scent he smells body odor. It smells like the inside of a locker room. And he looks, and the deck is full of men. They are all on their benches rowing. And there's a man up near the mast. The man is tall, dark-skinned. All these men, you know, many of them are bare-chested, don't have anything over their tops, and yet they're sweating profusely. And this man who's walking toward him he's white-haired, he has long hair, and it's in a top knot, like it's tied together at the very top. And the same thing, he's got a long white beard that is tied down here. He has a white, even though his face is tanned and leathery, his jaw is square, and just, you can tell that his arms hold strength. Around his shoulders, he has nothing over his arms, but over his shoulders he has draped the skin of a dog of some sort. It looks to be, maybe it's a fox, but the head is actually dangling next to his shoulder. And he walks up to him and he slaps him. Not Michael slapping him. This man slaps Michael so hard, and he feels his jaw snap. And the man picks him up as if by his throat. And he can feel his fingers almost wrapping all the way around his neck. and he says, "Back to your oar, my cow." I don't know why he sounds like a pirate, because I don't know anything. Anyway, he sounds like an Irish pirate. "Back to your oar, my cow, if you want to outrun this washer," pointing back at the deep black sky behind them. What in the world? He gets Michael gets onto his oar, and he sits down on his bench, and he grasps his oar, and he tries to mimic what the other guys are doing. He's rowed a boat before, but never just one side of a boat. And he's going back and forth. He notices, he looks, when he wraps his fingers around the oar, he notices his arms. His skin is tanned. His fingers are long, and they're strong. The veins, even in his hands, bulge as if like the vines on a tree. And he grips his oar, and he pulls back, and he's following the person in front of him, and he pulls back again. And then on the third time, the oar just keeps going. It's as if he can't get it out of the water, and it throws him and pins him up against the side of the gunwale and smacks his jaw right where this other man had just smacked him. And he hears his jaw pop yet again. And the man, the man who had smacked him the first time, we'll call him the white-haired man, he was at the other end of the boat. He's got his back turned to him now, so he hasn't seen what Michael's done. And the oarsman behind Michael, he grasps his oar, and Michael sees that when he does, he doesn't have a pinky. He's got 4 fingers, and he twists his oar such that it comes out of the water freely. And he puts it, he rights it, and he shoves Michael back into his bench, and he says, "You better get back to work, Michael, before the taskman sees." And he smiles at him, and so he rows some more, and the storm is getting closer. Michael's looking at the shore where he knows houses used to be just a few minutes ago. And the taskman says, "We're going to beach her, and we're going to tie her off there, and see if we can just outlast this storm and ride it out on land. We don't want to go through this one while we're on the water." And without thinking, Michael just says, "There's a harbor not far from here, just about a mile down the coast." And he doesn't know where he is. He's thinking he's at the same place. The beach doesn't look anything like the beach that he left. And the taskman comes around, and he grabs my cow by the jaw, and he turns his head around, and he looks at him, looks in his eyes, and he says, "Is this my cow, or is this the evil one?" And Michael doesn't know what to say, so he just stays quiet. He tries to go back to rowing, and then the man just walks back. He walks away, and then as he walks to the end of the boat, he turns. The taskman turns and says, we'll see, my cow." And so he says, "Row, we need to outrun this washer." And so they row, and Michael's able to to keep it. I'm just going to start calling him my cow now, because at some point in the story, I've got to change his name to my cow, because that's what they're calling him. So my cow sees that he's getting in the rhythm of it a little bit, and he feels his back is strong. And one thing he notices though right away is he's hungry. He is hungry as can be, and he's sweating, though he just started rowing, but maybe he didn't, because he looks at his body and he sees that it is not his body. Like I say, his fingers are strong, his legs are thin but strong, and they're clothed in a fur, kind of like he's got some moccasins on, but around his shins are a fur, and around his waist is a fur, but he's bare chested, and he feels, even though the weather is cold and the rain on him is cold, it doesn't bother him. It's as if he was used to it. And the language that he hears coming from the taskman as he gives his orders, he knows it's not English, but yet he understands it. And how is that? How is it that he can understand and hear it as if in his mind that it was exactly what he was supposed to, what he was saying? And he rose, and he just tries to force it from his memory, because he doesn't want to force it from his mind, because he doesn't want to get slapped again. And he looks back, and he dips his head down as he's moving his oar forward. He dips his head down below the sail so that he can look forward, and sure enough, there's a river there, a creek they would call it back in Virginia. Up here they call it a river, and he didn't know what river it was. He just knew that last year when they were up here vacationing, they had gone out on the boat with a friend, and they had gone from that river. They had gone out from that river from a dock, and he just remembered that there was kind of a cliff on the north side of the river. And so that's what he was thinking, that maybe they could seek shelter there, and he hadn't even thought about it, but maybe it looked kind of like the same river, but it's too hard to say. And when they got up close, taskman barked some orders, and two men dropped the sail, and they steered their craft into the river. Now the tide was going with them. The tide was actually going into the river, and so it was good. It wasn't that hard, but they had to navigate these things that he didn't know what these fingers of land were jutting into the river, and Mike Howe notices them. They're very, as they get closer, he realizes they're oyster reefs. He had heard about this. His father had told him that in the olden days, the oyster reefs had grown into the water such that you would have to zigzag back and forth going down a river, and sure enough, that's what they had to do. They were rowing while the rudderman steered, and he couldn't believe how large the oysters were as he rode by them. The ones that he had spent all day this summer opening, and that he hated so, he didn't even like seafood. They were about 2.5, 3 inches long, and it just made him shudder any time that he saw someone scarf one down raw. And they rode for about 10 minutes, and the waves got more and more. What's up?
I'm sorry. But somebody says that they're watching, but we can't see them.
Okay.
Hi, so you can see us.
If you can see us, so I'll just keep going, because actually I'm almost done. I'm sorry, there's probably some sort of technical issue with the Google Hangout. I'm glad that you can see it, but we're not showing you on this end. So we'll try to get that worked out between now and next time. But let's see how it goes. Well, and so they're rowing, and about 10 minutes into it, the wind is just bitter cold, but yet my cow is not shivering. He's actually he's starting to truly work up a sweat. His back is sore, but somehow he's used to it. The pain doesn't bother him. It's as if his body had always felt pain. And they rode zigzagging in these oyster reefs until they reached the cliff. The cliff looked different now. It looked more rugged. It actually had trees at the top instead of a house. And they rode up right next to it, to the cliff. The cliff was facing north, and the wind and the waves and the thunder was extreme at this point. And they stopped. One man up on the bow jumped into the water and swam. The water was freezing, yet he swam to shore, and another man threw him a rope, and they pulled the boat in closer to shore, and wrapped the bow line around a tree. And then another man did the same with the stern, so that the stern too was on a tree, but kind of catty cornered, so they weren't right up next to the beach. They were still in the water, but they were secured. And then the taskman looks at my cow and says, "Make us a shelter." And my cow, he looked at the man behind him, and the man behind him smiled, and he said, "You go get the other end of the sail." And so the man behind him got one end of the sail, and my cow got the other end of the sail, and they untied it from I don't know what you call those things that go up and down on the mast. Someone else can look that up and maybe post it in first class. But they untied the sail, and the man explained to them how to do it, and they draped the sail over a stay line, a line that ran down the mast and to the stern of the boat. They draped it over so it kind of made a tent, although one end was open. Well, someone else had then closed up the other end of the mast, other end of the sail around the mast, so that it was like a huge tent, and it stunk. It stunk of body odor. It stunk worse than the men's locker room at the YMCA that he would go to. It stunk horribly. And there's that acrid, oily smell that he could not figure out what it was. But above all, he was starved to death. And on the edge of his, next to his oar, was a shield. It was hanging there, just a leather shield, a leather over wood shield that had some red and blue. I won't go too much into detail on that, but behind the shield was it looked like there might have been the butt of a knife, and he grabbed it and yanked it out, and it was actually a sword. It was a short sword, maybe 2 feet long, thick, stubby, and a little bit rusted, a little bit pitted, with a handle. The handle he knew was shark skin, because it was felt a little bit like sandpaper. So he goes outside of the tent, and the stern of the boat is actually, no, excuse me, the bow of the boat is actually close to an oyster reef, and he grabs the gunwale and hops over the side, and he's surprised that he wasn't scared to do it. And then he's hanging on to the bow of the boat with the gun like an orangutan, maybe hanging on to the side of a cage. And he's doing it with just one hand, and as he's reaching out his sword, he feels something slap him on the back of his head, and he looks up, and there's the taskman, and the taskman says, "What are you doing?" And my cow says, "I'm hungry." And the words that came out of his mouth were not English, but yet he knew that's exactly what he said. He said, "I'm hungry." And then he was so hungry, he ignored him. He ignored the taskman, turned his mind back to the oyster reef. He plunged his sword between two huge oysters that picked up. And if he was to let go and fall onto this reef, he would be severely hurt. The oysters grew straight up and they were sharp on the edges. And so they were like rows of knives sticking up, just waiting for someone to hurt themselves on. And he plunged it between two oysters and he popped one off and he threw it on the deck. And then he did another one and another one. And after 4, he dropped his sword over the gunwale inside the boat and he swung himself back up. And he's looking at his hands, and his hands have blisters all inside of, not blisters, I'm sorry, calluses all inside of him, all across his palm and across the insides of his knuckles, and actually on the back of his knuckles. How in the world do you get calluses on the back of your knuckles? And he grabs his sword again, and the taskman's looking at him, and he takes this oyster that looks like it's the size, it's long and skinny, and it's like the size of a foot. I mean, it's like a 14-inch long oyster. And he remembers from shucking, but he doesn't have a shucking knife, and it'd probably be useless on such a huge oyster. So he takes it and he shoves it in the corner of one of his, in the boat, in the bow there, and he takes the oyster, the sword, and he knows right where to hit it, right at the beginning of the lip, and he cracks open, he busts off the tip of the lip, shoves the sword in there and twists, and out pops off the top, and he rolls back the top, and there's this huge oyster, and he looks up and he gives it to the taskman. He grabs another oyster and does the same thing. And he hates oysters. At least that's what he remembers. And as he's getting ready to raise this thing to his mouth, he looks, and the taskman has already done this, and he's chewing. Actually, he's gripped it. It's so large you can't just eat it in one bite. He's actually bitten off a piece of it, and the gray and tan juice is running down his white beard, and it's actually kind of gotten around his knot in his beard. And the taskman says, "Sometimes I think I should cut you up and throw you to the monsters. Sea monsters." I need to think of a good word for that. Sometimes I think I should cut you up and throw you to the monsters, and then again, sometimes I'm happy I haven't. And he wipes his chin. He throws the shell overboard and he walks back into the tent. And then my cow is left there he hasn't eaten anything yet, so he's starving to death. So even this thing that looks like a bunch of snot inside a dirty shell looks appealing to him. So he tips it up and he slurps it inside of his mouth, and it is gooey, but it is good. It is salty, and he is absolutely starving. He drinks the juice from it, and then he gets another. He does this 3 times, and he cannot eat anymore. That's how huge these oysters are. He was absolutely full, couldn't eat anymore. He walks back into the tent with all the men. He sees the men are laying down on their benches. Some have their feet toward the gunwales. Some have their feet in the aisle. The guy behind him is already snoring. There's a man at the stern of the boat. And he doesn't know, but he's what the taskman is saying to him. But the taskman and he are talking. And my cow goes and he slips his sword back behind the shield. And he doesn't know what he's supposed to do, but everybody else is sleeping. So how can he sleep? what is going on? And he lays his head back, and it hits. It actually he lays his head back with his feet toward the gunwales, and there's nothing to rest his head on. So he scooches in even a little bit closer. It's just a short bench. And he lays his head back onto the hardwood, and he thinks, how am I going to be able to fall asleep? It's freezing cold. But yet he wasn't shivering. The bench was hard, but his body knew the bench. It's like the pain from his back was still there, but it was familiar. His body just knew it. It wasn't anything out of the ordinary. And that's where we'll stop.
We should probably leave the broadcast on for a while because if it's behind.
Yeah, we'll see. Well, I know that several of you guys have said, or at least I think some folks have said that they're on the broadcast. I apologize because I can't see you. We'll try and figure that out for next time. Don't know how many of you folks are actually on the broadcast. We had tested this, and it tested perfectly, obviously. And of course, nothing happens the way you want it when you go live. So no worries. I hope you guys enjoyed that. What I would love for you guys to do is I would love for somebody to dive in, and if I could see who is here, I'd sign it to you. I want somebody to get me some Viking, some Norse sayings. You know, the Vikings I hear didn't really write down a whole lot, so what actually is written about them is actually written by other cultures. So if somebody could get me some Norse sayings, that would be good. It might help with so my guy doesn't sound like a drunken Irish pirate.
American Irish.
Yeah. And or maybe I just give up on that altogether. But if you had some Norse sayings, that would be great. Anything that you might think might be pertinent to Viking culture that you'd like to see integrated into it. Maybe religious aspects, the Viking gods. I don't know anything about them. I knew that there's Thor. The only reason I know that is because of the movie.
Apparently, Viking king came to the Slavs. And became the king.
Oh, okay. One other thing is that I do know that the Vikings made it. I believe there was something as far as Nova Scotia, but they never really came down into Maine, and so I'm going to have to deal with that somehow in the story. But I think that's easy to do because if they had something in Nova Scotia, then they could have easily had a jaunt down to Maine. So you guys need to find out, like, tell me what you think, where the story should go. Like, I like this beginning. I have no idea where it should go. Should they, who are they going to see? What's going to happen next? Like, there's several different ways to write a story, and the way that we're doing it this way is kind of discovering the story. Instead of planning it out, if you guys want to plan it out, that's fine. But what's fun about this is you just sort of discover it as you go along. And so, don't go too far down the road, but maybe, one or two chapters, just give me some ideas. What do you think should happen next? And I'll take your input. We'll take it. If you guys can throw it in first class under the story building folder, that would be fantastic. This video is going to be posted for anybody that wasn't able to be here, which is the way I'm seeing it, pretty much everybody. But anyway, it's going to be posted on my blog, and then you'll be able to actually go there and review it. If you wanted to, like, point people to the video, then they could actually watch it.
And I'll put a link to that in the folder. I'll post the link so that you guys don't have to search for it.
And then we will, I guess that's about it. I feel like there's something else. Oh, what we'll do also, I'll make another link. I mean, if I can get this worked out, we'll make another link for next week, same time, same place, and then we'll go from there. It may be a different link because this one obviously isn't working all that well. But that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And I'd like to be able to interact with you somehow by doing this. But unless I can kind of figure that out, it shouldn't be a big deal. I'll figure it out. It's no huge deal. So hopefully we'll have it up and running a little bit better for next time. All right. Sounds great. Thank you guys, and we'll see you next time.
Should we leave it up a little while because it's behind for everybody else?
I think we're good.